In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples today. Hi, welcome to Materialise, the Launch Tabletop podcast. This is an episode that I didn't have my notes in front of me right at the right spot. I was in a different place. So this is, today is May 26th, 2023, and this is episode 25. This week's topic is giving games a soul with board game artist Andrew Bosley. Well, I thought I was super organized, and then I totally forgot to have my script in front of me in the right spot, and so then I was like, oh, how do I do this again? What do I say? What are words? How do we language? Hi, everyone. Welcome to the show. Today with me is Kate, as pretty much usual. I think you've been on pretty much every episode.
Almost.
Almost, yeah.
A couple where I just went, no, I can't do it today.
Not today.
But yes,
so, yeah.
practically part of the furniture now.
And I know that you've been very busy because we've got a lot going on at Launch Tabletop, trying to get ready for our Kickstarter, which we'll talk about at the end of the episode. So heaps happening. But we are also joined today with our special guest, Andrew Bosley. Hello, Andrew.
Hey, guys. Good to be with you.
How you doing?
I'm good.
I don't even know I know that you're in the United States. That's about all I know about. Like, are you in kind of like you're in the East Coast, I think, sort of, or Central somewhere, maybe? Roughly?
I'm actually west.
West. I was picturing west, but I said east, so there you go.
It's one of those. I'm in Arizona. I'm in northern Arizona, so southwest.
There you go. Yeah. In some ways, I reckon Arizona is sort of similar to Queensland, I would say, in terms of temperament.
I suspect it's a bit drier.
Drier? Okay.
Although maybe it's like Western Queensland, where it's significantly away from the coast.
Because my memory, this obviously nothing's changed since I was there, but I was in Arizona in 1994, and I remember just a lot of the open landscape and the deserts and things like that, and it's also what I think of with a lot of Queensland. Queensland's a lot of very wide spaces and a lot of deserts. So yeah, I don't know, maybe it's not a good.
It's still hot and still dry since you were last year, so it hasn't changed that much, but. I am actually up in the northern part, so it's a little bit less hot. When you think of Arizona and you're thinking, burning to a crisp, we're less than that.
Yeah, okay. So a bit more habitable in that sense.
Yes. So the Dreyers who just messaged to say hi to the cacti, they're up in Portland in Oregon. So
they are more west than me.
Yes.
Yeah, this is true.
Excellent.
Cool. Well, I'll read my little introduction bio thingy for Andrew so that I can hopefully get this fairly accurate. So in Everdell, Tapestry, Caylus, Love Letter, and many more, Andrew Bosley's style charms the viewer with welcoming worlds and lovable characters rendered in bright, intricate detail. Andrew is also the game designer of Planecrafters and Lightning and Bolt, and I think you also did the art. You did both game design and art for those, as I understand it. And Andrew's also the creator of the upcoming release, The Smoking Bones, which is in partnership with Stonemaier Games. We'll come back and unpack some of those things later on. But before we do dive into this main interview, let's get started with the world-renowned Materialise questionnaire. So, Andrew, these are 5, although in your case, I'm actually going to ask you 6 questions, which are hopefully aiming to get to the core of who you are very quickly so that everyone, we all know what you're about and what drives you.
Yes.
And we will judge you on your answers. They will be judged.
You'll be judged. So what we'll do is we'll make you like this, and then we'll go to the section where I've got the questions.
Uh-oh.
Alrighty, so question 1, Andrew, is: are you more of a heart, a diamond, a club, or a spade?
I think I am more of a club. I don't know why, but
that's fine.
That's all right. I'm more of a club because I'm a bit of a blunt instrument, but
that's when I was saying it out loud and saying I'm a club, I thought that's probably what that might seem like I mean, but I don't know what it is. I just like
It
the
could be
shape.
also like a club, like an inclusive like place where people get together
That's
and
what it
share an
is.
experience. That's also another way of
Yeah.
another type of club,
And
right?
it's
That's
a
what it is.
pleasing shape. It's
Oh,
beautifully
it's beautiful.
symmetrical.
Yeah.
There's lovely rounded bits,
Yeah.
and
Cool.
awesome for crowd control too sometimes as well.
All right, let's move on to question 2. So question 2 is dinosaurs who are pirates or robots who are ghosts.
Ooh, dang. I'm gonna have to say dinosaurs who are pirates.
Yeah, I think that would be hilarious.
Yeah.
Like little T-Rex trying to steer the boat
Yeah.
would be great.
It's
It would
definitely-
just toss the ankylosaur overboard. That's like the anchor because they're very,
Yeah.
you know,
See, I was
Pterosaur.
thinking maybe a stegosaurus or an ankylosaurus. You could use their tail as a bit of a rudder.
Yeah.
Maybe I don't know.
Definitely.
I don't know of the hydrodynamics of such things, but
Yeah.
awesome.
I think of them as fairly ruthless, but maybe charming as well. Pirates, robots that are ghosts is, I mean,
It's
we're delving
very
into
existential.
deeper territory there. That
Yeah,
it's above my pay grade.
yeah. All right. Question 3: what's your favorite snack or drink when playing a tabletop game?
So when I get together with my game group, I always bring caramel popcorn. So that probably that or cookies, chocolate chip.
Any particular sort? Like, are we talking a chocolate chip? Bit of oatmeal, maybe?
Oatmeal is my favorite, though my wife's favorite is chocolate chip, so we have chocolate chip more often. And she makes a really great chocolate chip cookie. So that's probably my
non-baker here.
Yeah.
Can you make a combination like an oatmeal chocolate chip cookie? Does that work? Is that a thing?
Sure, you could mix chocolate chips through it. It might be a little grittier than your average chocolate chip cookie, but
it's good. We do that often. I think I'm probably more partial to an oatmeal raisin myself. But
well, they go nice and squishy. A lovely squishy raisin is hard to beat.
And it feels healthier. So I could have more.
I just saw that we had a couple of comments from in our chat from the Dreyers. Just to go back, Kat says, "Who doesn't love to go clubbing?" So hey, there you go. That's also another form of club.
True.
And then also, Dreyer would like to see a T-Rex climbing the rigging. That actually is a funny picture as well. I wonder if, like, now this is me taking this way too seriously, but if these kind of animals engineered the ships, then would they engineer it in a way that is good, like it has different shapes and proportions and
So you're talking about designing the ship for the user experience of the dinosaurs.
I am because we make things that like fit our hands,
yes,
like conveniently, and you'd think that maybe they would as well. I don't know.
What would those things look like for dinosaurs? Yeah,
I think we'd miss the comedic, some comedic potential by designing it just for dinosaurs. I see, little T-Rexes hanging on the side of a ship.
But maybe that's part of the comedy, is that because unlike with humans where we've all got the basic shape that we all share across all of humanity, dinosaurs has so much diversity in their bodies. So what if you had the Triceratops engineers making the boats that suit Triceratops type bodies, but then the T-Rex bodies don't fit it at all? Oh, this is like Hollywood movie in the making.
Yes.
Doorways would be very short because Triceratops is not tall, and so T-Rex is just going to walk straight into the doorway every single time. Like the banana peel on the floor equivalent, but for dinosaurs.
And we also had a comment regarding the food, which was flaming hot Cheetos are banned in our gaming space. And I'm assuming it's because of the stuff they leave on your, the stain they leave on your fingers and whatever. I know I was at a convention once a few years ago, and this is pre-pandemic and everything, and I had a friend who I get to the table to play, and there's other people there, and they were like, "All right, here's wet wipes. You have to have everything, all your hands clean. I don't want any like oils on my cards. Like I want everything. And like if you can't manage that, then I will have some sleeves. But like it was just very kind of particular, and they were wanting to keep their game in pristine condition. And I was like, oh okay, like it's fine. I complied. It was not a problem. But it was just they were like did not want any marks or anything on the cards or anything. So yeah. All right, let's move on. Let's get these questions done. So, question number
serious
4.
one. Serious question.
Question number 4 is cards or dice?
Cards for sure.
Correct answer.
Yeah.
I think we're both team cards on the most part. Although sometimes I get defensive and try and then I want to get into the corner of dice and defend them, their honor. But yeah, I think cards are great.
I mean, I like cards more. But it's also it's hard to illustrate on dice. I hadn't thought
that from your perspective with your main career path. Yeah, dice probably isn't the most useful for that. So.
I'd be out of a job if we only had dice games. So.
Well, no, we just have to have dice that are really big, so they're
That's
really
true.
big sides that you can paint on. That's all we need.
And you'd get a workout every time you needed to roll a dice.
Yeah, it's like a full-on.
Board gaming would be much more active.
That's true.
Okay, question number 5, the last official question of the questionnaire. What fictional character would you invite to a game night?
Fictional character. I don't know if he'd be great at a gaming or would want to. I don't know, but I don't know why it comes to mind. Maybe Doctor Strange or.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. It'd be full of.
So my worry with Doctor Strange is, as I understand his general lore and history, is that his memory is amazing, which is why he's able to study the books and remember everything and do all the spells. So I'd be worried that he'd be tracking card counting everything and knowing what moves I've made. Be I think he'd crush me in that regard.
Yeah,
and that's ignoring any magic tricks.
Yeah,
but that sounds cool.
Maybe.
On the bonus, you could get his cape to help levitate the table, maybe. So that could be kind of fun.
That's true.
Nice. So the bonus question that I've got for you is one I asked Dan May last week, which is, which non-living artist do you wish you could work with on a tabletop game?
If I could pick a non-living artist to make a game, well, 2 of my favorite artists either of them would be fantastic, but one would be more. My favorite artist is a Czech artist named Alfons Mucha. He would be fantastic. I mean, he could make anything look amazing, but probably would be actually quite appealing, I think, in games would be an artist named J.C. Leindecker. He was the predecessor to Norman Rockwell here in the States, and he was a very famous illustrator in his time, and his stuff is just gorgeous and charming. And
ooh,
I'm writing down these names. So it's J.C. Leindecker.
Right now.
Yeah,
and then what was the first? Yep.
Oh, sorry.
Alfons Mucha.
Alfons Mucha. Yeah, Alfons is Alfonse. Mucha, Mucha.
Ooh, he has
There you go.
I mean,
beautiful kind of Art Deco thing going on.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes.
We can.
Yeah, his work is amazing. Very, very influential for me, and definitely among at least my generation of artists, students. Alphonse was definitely an influence. Definitely
incredible coloring.
Yeah, he did. Sorry,
Mike. That's okay. We have support for your pick. So Kat likes Mucha as well, and Hannah C says Leindecker and Mucha. So there you go. I don't know somehow I've missed these people, so I'm going to have to investigate them later. That sounds really cool.
Incredibly beautiful.
All right. Well, thank you for participating in the Materialise questionnaire. I hope it wasn't too traumatic for you.
I got through it, and I'll be okay.
You can
live to tell the tale.
Yes.
With Telltale. Yeah. All right, so let's move into the main chat and interview. All right. So, Andrew, you have been a part of the board game hobby for a number of years, and I will confess to perusing your blog before we had this show, and I've read a couple of your posts, and in that I noticed that you'd been playing games for a long time, like what 20 something years. How were you introduced to modern boarding games? Like, how did that kind of happen for you?
So it was just through a friend. I'm sure, like most of us, when my wife and when I was in school in California, we were a poor young couple that couldn't afford anything, and we had another couple that we would hang out, and they introduced us to Settlers first, and then Puerto Rico and all these things. And we literally went home from playing Catan, and we both had dreams about Settlers of Catan that night.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. And it really was like, I mean, my wife and I played games all the time together, but we were literally playing what everybody who doesn't know about modern board games, they think that we're limited to as, Monopoly and Yahtzee and things like that. And it's like, and we enjoyed that. We still play Yahtzee, don't play Monopoly anymore, but yeah, it was like, it just blew our minds. There was something that was just a little bit more thinky than what we were used to. And so our friends became our go-to. Like, I think we actually spent the money and bought Settlers of Catan, but $40 for a game at the time was like, this is crazy talk money.
Yeah.
And so this other couple, they seemed to get games all the time, and so we'd get their used copies. So when they got tired of a game, they'd pass it on to us. And so we that was kind of the start, is through them acquiring games because of them. And then eventually we started to own up and get our own occasionally.
Yeah.
But
I think that's actually an interesting thing that I wonder if it still happens as much today, is passing on games to friends that, either you've not really playing much anymore or just have space for or whatever. Because I feel like, maybe this is all just me and my personal nature, I feel like there's more of a, like, holding on to collections and having huge collections seems to be kind of a more common, like, way of people doing it. But yeah.
It's really definitely a collector's hobby. Obviously, we all love our shelves that are filled with games, and I think it seems to be, at least for me, it's the amount of shelf space I have determines when I start giving games to people. Like, I filled up my game shelf, and then I need more space for more. And okay, these ones don't make the cut, so I'll just give these to friends. But I also like. I hope it still happens often. I try to, as much as I can, to give games to other people so that I can kind of spread the hobby. But But yeah, anyway, it's definitely been a part of my life for a long time. Even when I was a kid, I wasn't making modern board games, but I was making games as a teenager, like reinventing a really bad version of chess, or some real strange, weird thing. Yes, I need to get a bigger house. It's true.
So yeah, Kat says, Andrew, that's where you get a bigger house, is when you start running out of shelf space.
This is true. But yeah, anyway, but games have been around for a long time for us, which we're very glad.
Yeah, very cool.
Your children also enjoy playing board games. Have they discovered that yet?
They do. Yes, actually, I have 5 kids. It's funny. My oldest, I think, he may listen to this someday, but I don't know. But maybe out of rebellion a little bit, he was like, I'm not playing games. That's what my dad does. And he's moved out, and he's lives on his own. He comes back and we watch movies, but he's now just recently been like, I want to play games, and that's been
lovely.
But my younger kids, my youngest is 10, and everybody, all of the kids have played. We've played the Scythe campaign with most of my kids.
Wow.
Played Everdell and everything. So yeah, they love it. It's wonderful. My wife loves to play games, but she doesn't like learning new games.
Yep.
So
it's a big load having to add new games in there. And if you're running a household, which, well, for little ones, well, they're not so little now, but you know what I mean, at home, that's going to keep you busy, and loading a new game in there, that's taxing.
So my kids are my guinea pigs when I want to play a new game. If it's not my game group, which are all adults, then I force them to play games with me. So.
It's a board game. It's a board game version of that idea where musician parents have a lot of kids so they can have their own band. Like when they grow up a bit, it's like, oh, we're just gonna have our own board game group. We're just gonna grow them. Like that's what we're doing here.
Everybody says we made a basketball team, but we don't play basketball. We just play board games, and so we made a perfect board game.
Is there a current, house favorite? So when you sit down, it's like, let's whatever the current is.
The current one. We just pulled out Everdell more recently. We played it not as much as many people, but we just pulled it out more recently and been playing. And we committed. This is the secret, the dirty secret in the Bosley household. I've never played any of the expansions. And so we have committed as a family that we are going to play every single expansion. Wow. So that's come to the table more recently, and I think that's going to be coming back often for a while.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've only played the base. I don't think I've played any of the expansions from memory. I will
confess, Everdell is one of my favorites.
Okay.
I haven't played that many of the expansions though, just because I don't have that much space in here. So learning a new game is are you kidding? Yes. It's up there for me with Terraforming Mars and my other, and I'm biased, is Unfair. So
I see. Well, it's funny, just lots of people assume that I would know everything about Everdell, including everything about production, about release times, and when they're going to come to different countries and different things like that. And I am like probably the most out of the loop when it comes to any project I'm working on. Yeah. But I'm trying. I feel embarrassed at times when I have like no clue how to play a game that I've illustrated in.
I think that's like I feel like that's not unusual, and I think I liken it to when actors perform in movies or TV shows that have really dedicated fan bases. Like they're either like nerd culture ones, or they're just a dedicated base. But the actor's just doing a job, right? Like they're an actor wanting to act. They get hired to do the job. It doesn't mean they know, like they might be performing in like a Jane Austen thing, but it doesn't mean they know Jane Austen's like lore and history backwards completely. And I think sometimes we forget that hiring and getting people who are really skilled in something doesn't mean that they're automatically like the deepest fan of that particular thing as well. So yeah,
I love games, so I love being able to talk about it. But yeah, and I wish I could say like every game I are on like an equal thing, but it's not. Some projects end up being more like just a job that I've come to work on, and then other ones I've become very passionate about. But yeah, I would say that fits me. I'm certainly an artist first, and then a game artist after that.
Yes. Well, that's a good segue into asking, like, how did you end up doing art for board games? Like, what was that stepping stone into that?
Yeah. When did Andrew start arting? Is it something you've done from the time you were very tiny? Was it something you discovered later?
No, art was definitely the thing that I was going to do since I was 5 years old.
Wow.
It's that's been definitely a lifelong pursuit. It where it was going to go was different at different times in my life. But I mean, the quick rundown. I went to school to work in feature animation. There weren't any when I graduated. There weren't really openings at that time, and I had a young family that I was needing to take care of, and so I actually went into video games, which I very much enjoyed, but it wasn't the original intent to go into video games, but doing the same thing that I had been trained to do, which was concept art, visual development work, which is the idea generation for how things might look, characters might look, environments might look in games. And so I did that for a long time, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. But then I started working on my freelance portfolio. I was doing illustration work for different companies, doing different things. And so for a time I was heading towards like fantasy illustration, like Magic the Gathering type cards and things like that. And kind of assumed, okay, so eventually when I was I left the company I was working for and purposely to go freelance, I assumed I would go in that direction. But through my contacts with different companies, particularly Fantasy Flight Games, that actually led to the first board game that I worked on, which was Mission Red Planet. And still at the time, even when I was doing that, which I had a blast working on, and then Citadels came same time. It was just like this isolated job that like I was excited to work on, and we loved playing those games. In fact, I knew Citadels well before I was ever.
Yeah, when it was the little box game, it was the little. Which I have upstairs. No, it's down here somewhere.
But I knew those games, and so it was exciting to work on them. But I assumed I just needed to jump onto the next video game project after that. And it wasn't until Everdell that really it was okay. I mean, it was certainly the biggest board game project I had worked on. And so it was kind of a time commitment. And right at that same time, I was asked to work on something else, really actually more towards the collectible card venue, and Keyforge was the game. I ended up still doing some work for them, but I kind of had a choice of, do I work on Keyforge for as long as, they kind of had an open door to just take as many projects assignments as I wanted to, or work on this upcoming game. I think it was called, what was it called? Everwood. I think it was called Everwood or something at first.
I know you've done a blog post on your website which you talk about it, and I saw the name there too. I've forgotten the name there now.
Yeah,
as well. But yeah,
I mean,
those
for
are
a long
interesting.
time,
Check it out.
I had the prototype, and it had that old. Anyway, I had to make that choice because it just didn't have time for both, and I was really fortunate that Starling Games basically took a chance and worked with me on that, and it was just the dream project for me. And then it's just been board games ever since then, really, with some video game concept art in between, and other things, other industries. I always have a little foot in the door in lots of things, but board games have definitely been the primary focus for ever since Everdell.
Yeah.
So I was reading over your the Everdell blog that you wrote I think last year, and I recommend for people to go to check out Andrew's website. I'll put up a link right now.
And we'll pop that in the notes somewhere.
Yeah, Bosley Art. I think it already is in the description on YouTube anyway. So bosleyart.com, BOSLEYART.com. So I was reading on that, and the thing that I thought was interesting, you share an anecdote where you'd gone to, I think, like Gen Con or a similar convention, and trying to meet and greet and hand out business cards and things, and you'd given a card to Dan Yarrington. I think that's how you say his name. Like 2 years in a row or so, whatever, and then you got a contact from Dan, and you like Dan May, and you were like, oh, obviously it's been passed on, and but Dan May apparently didn't know about these other interactions, and it was all like serendipitous and just so it was pretty funny.
It was crazy. Yeah, I was at Gen Con at the time, play testing Plane Crafters. I wasn't even there thinking I was going to. I think it wasn't until the second year that I came that I was like, oh, why don't I actually approach some publishers and see if they need artists? But I met with Dan Yarrington, who's a wonderful person. He's great. It just, I had assumed that eventually that got down to Dan May, but it wasn't until years later. I mean, maybe a couple of years ago, that I found out that Dan was like, no, I found you on my own.
He mentioned last week that I think he was just, casting a net looking for for interesting art that made him go, oh, what about? And that was how he found you.
That's crazy.
Interesting.
So this
how
very fortunate.
things
raises a question for me is like, so was it hard? Like, I assume it's less hard now because obviously you've got a name that people recognize and they see the projects you've worked on. But earlier on, was it hard trying to get the attention of publishers to say, hey, give me a chance and work on something? Or was that something that you found wasn't really a barrier for you?
No, it was definitely. I mean, it's always hard. It's always hard as an artist going, going into a new industry. The networking and the, having some sort of reputation in an industry really makes a big difference, and it takes time to establish that. I didn't. Concept art is much bigger, and video games industry is much bigger. I had some sort of reputation. Good, I think, reputation in the video game industry, but not one that like people would be talking about, anything I'd done and the nature of the work. Anyway, so going into board games, it definitely was just starting from scratch. It took time. I mean, like I said, I went to Gen Con for 1 or 2 years. It took 2 years for a first job to come out through that. And I had at that time already Mission Red Planet and Citadels that I had on my card and I was giving out.
Yeah.
And I had no idea what to expect. So I wasn't like shattered that I wasn't getting jobs. It wasn't the only thing I was doing at the time, but it certainly was an investment to go to those conventions and certainly talk to people and do more. And then I find out a year ago that it really didn't make any difference.
But so. I think one of the takeaways for me is because I think there's a parallel for people who are board game designers wanting to try and pitch to publishers and stuff. I think that there's a message where it doesn't necessarily happen quickly and it doesn't necessarily happen on your first try. So like as in trying to be persistent or be consistent. And it will help in terms of just that, and I think you mentioned in the blog that Dan Y, you weren't sure if he even remembered you from the year before because I think you said you gave him another card the next year, and I think that's so true because I mean like Kate's just been at Gamma, and I know that like you Kate was saying to me the other day like you get given like tens to more than tens of business cards, like lots of business cards, and so it's like remembering who's who can be tricky.
Even when I go now, I mean, it's whatever notoriety I have in this industry is unusual for me to wrap my brain around. But there's a difference. Like it's interesting to see when I give someone a card now. I still go to conventions and I'll go and introduce myself to most of the publishers and just say, hey, if you're ever looking for art, I'd love to share my card. And usually the first response is like, okay, sure. Do you got a card? Okay, here it is. Yeah. Have you worked on anything before? I was like, well, I worked on Everdell and I've worked on Tapestry. And then they're like, oh, okay, wait a second. You have some experience in this.
You're that Andrew Bosley.
So it's like that's what every artist who is, including myself, 5 years ago was going through is like, a billion cards are being passed off. So it's not surprising that it takes so long. I will say it's interesting you bring up Gamma. Gamma is much closer to me, and I've never been to a convention that is not like consumer gamer focused. And I love playing games, but I'm not one that is terribly comfortable just going to a table and going, hey, I'm ready to play. And so I go to meet with friends, to meet new people, to introduce myself to publishers, things like that. And so Gamma, I feel like I need to go to Gamma because I wonder if it's a very different experience than other conventions I've been to.
I haven't, honestly, I will be completely honest, I haven't been to that many consumer-facing conventions. I haven't been that side of the industry that goes to cons. I've always been, the person in the back room organising production and stuff like that. And this was my first trade show. And honestly, it was wild. It was so much fun. And I'm not talking like wild in terms of crazy, crazy shenanigans, although I'm sure there were shenanigans. I just wasn't involved. But in terms of the people who were there, it was great. I met so many new people. I got some really good lessons in business card UX. And so just talking about the, giving your cards out, I got a ton of them. And a couple of things that I learned that I'm now applying to our business cards for LTT are stick a picture of your face on there, because I got so many cards and there were very few people who I can actually go, that's that person, that's that person, that's that person. Having a face on the card guaranteed that I know exactly who that person was. And also sticking pronouns on there, because not everybody looks like their pronouns. People get the wrong impression. And so I'm a she, her. It doesn't hurt me to put that stuff on there if it makes life easier for somebody else. Fantastic. So those were a couple of really good ones that I got. But yeah, business cards. Gamma was wild. It's not in Reno next year. We're going to Kentucky. So Louisville, Kentucky. So a little bit further away from you, but definitely come. It was fun.
Yeah. Well, oh, sorry. Go ahead, Eris.
No, you go.
I was just saying, it's like, well, you just take that whatever space there is, and instead of it being 3/4, tables, with games on it, which of course is wonderful, but in my perspective is not where I'm headed. If there's more people and people are at the other conventions, at the more consumer facing conventions, they're more they're interested in communicating with other people, but they're usually selling something. And I'm not. I mean, I'm interested in finding interesting games, but I'm more interested in talking to the people. And so, anyway, well, I'm excited to go try it. I think next year.
I've not been to Gamma yet. I've been to different ones in Australia, and I think what I understand with Gamma though, they still have a lot of playtesting like tables and stuff.
Yeah, that happens at night. There's game night, so every night there's a room with tables, and you organise a table for your business, and then you can go in there and do that at night. That was really popular. I didn't actually go to any of those. I was so exhausted by the end of it, and dinner just seemed
you were working a booth, which is hard work. So
that's hard, yeah.
It was, but it was also fun. But we're getting sidetracked. Let's talk about.
So I'm gonna rein us back in slightly and be that kind of person. So I've got a couple of questions about your process, Andrew, because I understand you work digitally, so you use digital tools to do your artwork. What kind of tools do you use these days, and how has your process changed over the years?
That's a great question. Yes, I've worked digitally certainly long before I came into the freelancing. When I was trained traditionally, so working with acrylics and watercolors, heading towards a traditional illustration world, and that feature animation, which still was done quite a bit traditionally back then too. But as soon as I went into video games, I had to change to digital. So that was a rough transition, but happened, and so by the time I finished working in video games and coming to this industry, I was proficient. But I was always attached to a computer, which is not a problem at all. But just as far as change, like I always had like a tablet. Imagine an iPad, but now attached to your desk with a stylus, and you're painting up on a screen.
That's
right. And that's great. In fact, I may go back to that, but eventually I upgraded to what's called a Cintiq, a Wacom Cintiq, which is a screen that I'm drawing on. But actually, just before that is when I actually started working on an iPad and using Procreate pretty much exclusively. And so,
what size of Cintiq do you have? So I used one for a little while and it couldn't get it to work for my iOS. It was a shame because it was lovely.
My Cintiq is 27 inches.
Oh, hello, Sailor.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Very nice.
Well, it took me. That was like having one of those. When I was in school, I had kids. I don't know how they could afford it, but I had kids bringing Cintiqs to class working on a Cintiq, and I'm like, I can't afford to do that. I didn't buy a Cintiq until, gosh, how long before? 15 years until after I was out of school, and until I felt like I could justify that sort of expense. But anyway, it's been a wonderful thing. But yeah, it's kind of it's a great tool. But the ironic thing is, that had been a thing like, oh, I need that to really be efficient in my work. But about a year or two before that, I had gotten an iPad Pro, and that really is the ideal system. So I work now 95% of the time is on my iPad. Everything comes to my computer. I touch up some things on my Cintiq, and that's where all my file system, are. But it's really just me sitting on my couch in my office most of the time, or at a separate desk, that's more like a drawing table, and I've just got this little tablet that I'm painting on. But it's an incredible setup that, it's not cheap, but it's definitely not the most expensive setup in the world. If that's 100% of the work I do, that's a pretty low overhead to have a professional level drawing, painting,
and incredibly portable too. You can take that with you anywhere, which is a real bonus. I can't take my setup here with me anywhere I go.
Yeah.
I definitely love the features of the iPad Pros. I agree with you. I love them for that, and I'm just annoyed because for me doing graphic design, it still is better on a computer, like a laptop or computer, and so I'm kind of still tethered to that for that work. But if I do so much, I do as much as I can on an iPad, just because I can do it in the couch, I can do it out and about, I think people who can do that, it's a really good, effective tool. Kat's also just mentioned in the chat, she says, I've transitioned to digital art, but I still need to collect all the art and craft supplies, even though I barely use them. And I will know I'm a fully grown up digital illustrator when I get myself a Cintiq. I know those feelings too. And then she's using a Surface laptop with a stylus. So I've not used them, but I know that they're popular with a lot of people as well. And Microsoft was really trying to cater to the art making market for a while. So yeah.
Before Kat goes and invests in that Cintiq, I would just say, when this Cintiq dies, I'm not getting another one. So I'm going to go back to, she'll know, and you guys will know, I'm going back to an Intuos. I would rather, for cost reasons and for other things, it's a total overkill. It's fun when someone walks in my office and they see this giant monitor and it's like, look how cool.
Working on a screen and it's
wow. But in the end, it's like it didn't change any of my work whatsoever. And I was working on an Intuos, sometimes a really small, cheap thing, until very recently, and it was just as effective for my career, for work. It was, so I would suggest it's not worth that. Yes. Yes,
Kat says, it's 100% satisfying, and I agree. But I had an Intuos 4, a big one in my job, and they paid for it back in 2007, I think. And I had the same one that I used on and off until 2019 or something, so it lasted for a long time. And I'm not an illustrator, so as in I just used it for mild illustration to help out. But it did take a while to figure out, because with those Intuos tablets, like a normal tablet, because it's not a screen, you're on the surface area you're drawing, but then you're looking up, at your Photoshop or whatever it is that you're painting in. And I know it definitely took me a while to get used to that kind of process difference compared to just, the tool on the surface that you're creating marks on. And
But what's so funny is I had someone warning me before I got a Cintiq, and they were like, your hand is going to be in the way when you're drawing on your Cintiq. Your hand is going to be in the way, and that is so annoying. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. I've been drawing since I was a kid, and that's exactly how we draw. My hand isn't in the way of my drawing, but then I get a Cintiq, and I'm like, Yeah, my hand, I don't know why, but it bothers me a
It's in
little
the
bit
way.
more.
Yeah,
On a piece
fair
of
enough.
paper. It's amazing.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, no, I've been drawing is fine. I don't know if there's something about like my Cintiq is not, it can turn, but I don't. I mean, I
Yeah,
can
you can
rotate, but I
rotate
don't.
on the screen, which was, I found that
But
great. I was like, oh, I can turn it so that I can get into these
yeah,
little bits.
but my hand is still in the same spot, so it's just
Yeah.
it's for whatever reason it's a little weird. So I actually am happy to go back to an Intuos when this one kicks the bucket. So
Yeah.
All
fun
right,
stuff.
I'm gonna drag us out of the technical weeds, and I know that other illustrators and that will probably want to keep going in
Quick
that thing,
shout
but
out to
we
Alana.
can. Yeah, hi Alana, welcome.
Hey Alana, good to see you.
Alana's one of our other co-hosts who's often here, but is away today. Well, obviously not able to be on the show, but is in the chat. So hi Alana. Okay, so I'm going to ask you change tack slightly with some of the questions. One is, so you've got 2 games that you've had published, like that you've designed yourself. How has being a game designer affected your approach to doing art for games for clients?
I don't know if it comes up a whole lot when that experience like directly impacts what I'm doing. Oh, thank you, Alana.
Alana says, "Love your work, Andrew."
That's very kind. I don't know if it directly impacts it a lot. I would say it definitely makes me more understanding of the process, and so it's like there are some times where there's not an overlap in the work that we're doing, but I'm often looking at a project as a whole and going, where are we going to put these things, and like the full art direction for a project. I try to do that for my clients when I can, as opposed to just paint this picture and fill this space. I'll try to look at the big picture, and I'll be like, can this work here? Can this work here? And having an understanding of game design and just some of those principles, like I can understand that it makes me more understanding, whereas maybe I might go, no, this is really important as for the visual aesthetic for this game, or not demand that it has to be this way, but just not understand and not be compassionate towards the other more important part of this process for making a game and how those things can impact each other. But I would say sometimes, occasionally, my experience with game design, I wouldn't say I'm a great game designer, but I very much enjoy it, and I understand it enough that sometimes I can have some input. There might be a question, or there might be something that's come up, and I might be included in the discussion and go, hey, could this work? And it can be helpful. But most of the time, I'm fairly separated from the design process when I am strictly working as an illustrator. But when I'm making my own game and doing both, it's actually a really fun collaboration between both sides of my brain. But unfortunately, it's probably not working that much with the designers.
So Kat's just asked, as an illustrator and designer, the illustration is actually part of my design process, as in I spend a lot of time feeling the whole game vibe and doing the art direction while I'm still developing the mechanical side. What do you do when you first design a game? Like, when you are making your own games?
What's the first task? Are you thinking mechanics, or like, I've got this idea for a world and you concept that out, and then you start adding the details of how the game works within that world?
I would say that, at least from my limited experience as a designer, both of the games that I designed were mechanics first. I mean, I can't help it not just thinking about at least the visual appeal of every prototype I'm doing to some degree, but it's certainly not like the art or the world. In the cases certainly of Plane Crafters and Lightning and Bolt, the world was not necessarily a huge part of that. That being said, like when I'm working on Smoking Bones stuff that's a world and a story that I've created, when I work with designers on those projects, it's very much more involved. And so when I'm thinking about gameplay, or I'm thinking about mechanics that might be involved in those games, I'm first of all thinking of the experience and thinking about the thematic way it ties into the world. That I found that is not always the or at least in my experience with some of these things. Sometimes that can be fantastic, and sometimes it actually can slow things down. Sometimes it's best to just go, okay, I'm going to focus on the mechanics. It depends on the team, but I've seen it work in both ways. Sometimes there's that synergy or whatever the word is, between those two disciplines, and they work out great. And then sometimes, if there's too much attention to theme in particular, and how do we make this work right for the theme? It actually will slow the design process down significantly.
Yeah.
Whereas for me, I feel like I hate to make it sound like this, but I can skin a game in a particular theme relatively easy. Of course, if we can make it more of a unified experience, then it's going to be that much more better. But in the end, if someone gives me a game design and says, we need to turn this into this thing, I think I can be more flexible. I know how much work it goes into designing a game. So if I say, no, I need you to change this mechanic like that, you might as well start from scratch sometimes. But if you say, Andrew, go ahead,
sorry. No, I was just like, one of the years ago, I heard someone talk, and it might have been on a Ludology episode like 5 or 6 years ago, or Game Design Roundtable podcast. Somebody said something which really stuck with me and has absolutely shaped how I perceive the application of this, which is that what we call theme most of the time is actually a setting, and the theme is an underlying thing. So like a good example could be, you could make a game about politics, and it's like political intrigue and like trying to do wheels and deals and compromises. But the setting could be a schoolyard with high schoolers, or it could be in a parliament with politicians, or it could be in a business, like between business leaders.
Could be in a bikie gang.
Could be, but it's the theme is politics and political kind of like wrangling and intrigue, but the setting can be a whole number of things, and yet often most of us conflate those two things and treat them as if they're the same thing, and that absolutely helped me approach it differently.
That's a really interesting point. I'd never thought of it that way.
Yeah, it totally changed me, because then it's like when I'm trying to process my own designs, or if I'm working on the graphic design for somebody else's, or helping playtesters on another person's game, I can kind of go, okay, well, what's the actual theme here? Like, what's the actual kind of like underlying message or interactions that these mechanics are trying to raise? And then what are some settings that might help accentuate that, or give people, make that more fun, or make that more easy to interact with? And yeah, I don't know. But it does mean then that you get that flexibility of going, oh, well, we could do two games, one that is aimed at a certain demographic with this kind of setting, and one that's aimed at a different demographic with this other setting, and not have to redesign the whole thing from scratch, like from a mechanic point of view.
Yeah. Well, Everdell was not originally pitched as a critter forest animal game. It was originally just a kind of a maybe more bland, just European city making theme. So it was Dan, if I'm remembering right, it was Dan May that was like, no, I think this really should be this. I never saw it when it wasn't critters. He pitched it to me as that. But yeah, I mean, it didn't need to change the design at all. So we were able to, it could go from one extreme to another fairly easily with art changes.
We're having some good interaction from the Dreyers, and I'm going to assume that Dreyer Inc. is George commenting, but I don't know for a fact. So it says the synergy is kind of how we work as a team, with Kat being the art and experience person and George really digging into the mechanical, maths and player agency side of things. And I think that is great. If you've got a team where you can have people whose strengths are in some of these different, buckets, then that obviously helps a lot. And I'm getting validation from Kat saying that, Kat says, yeah, it's been bugging me that people use theme that way after studying literature and music. And I agree. I think that's probably where the person who I heard it from was taking the philosophy from other creative fields. But it's just, for me, it radically reshaped how I approach game design and interpretation of things, as thinking about theme as not the setting necessarily. All right, we are getting close to our time, so I am going to just give Kate a heads up to pick one more question.
I've got two.
And
I want two.
You go. You ask one of them, and then I'll ask one, and then you ask the last one. How do we do that?
How often do you get to do non-digital art now? Is that a special treat for you because you're so busy doing these things for other people?
It is a special treat. I don't get to do it very often. I always keep a sketchbook with me wherever I go. So I always have a pencil and notepad in case I am stranded somewhere and I need to draw. So that's there, but it doesn't really happen. I'm not stranded in weird random places that often. So so the only times that I get to do that is when I'm purposely sacrificing some client or other personal project time to do it, but it's very important to me, so I'm doing it more often. There's a lot of practices, there's a lot of things, good habits as an artist that we as we move into, that we were really good at as artists in school, that we often neglect as we enter the professional world and we're busy with things, whether it's figure drawing or just painting outside and going and just drawing and painting from observation, like the things that really would make a difference in someone's pure drafting and painting skill, like we often neglect. And so I'm trying to do more of that. I absolutely love like plein air painting, going out and painting, in a beautiful environment. And I don't get a chance to do that, but I recently all right, I need a portable easel and I need some canvases, and I'm going to set aside this time and I'm going out and painting, and I've done it. But it's hard to do. So I try to do it as often as I can. I try to sketch, fairly often. But yeah, it's very hard to do because it's purely
what we really need.
What?
You go. I was just going to say, what we really need is a board game artist retreat where we lock you all in a compound for a week and say, here's your easels, here's your watercolors, off you go.
I love it. I love it.
Who would you take with you if we did such a thing? Let's say you can have you and 5 other artists. Who's in that compound?
Oh boy, I couldn't.
This is like choosing your favorite children, Kate. That's a tough call.
Yeah, I'd be turning someone down. I would say I would learn a lot if Vincent Dutrait was there. Vincent, I'm very, when it comes to board game artists, he's absolutely my favorite.
If you're watching, call me. We'll make it happen.
Yeah. He's all right. The only one I know that's traditional still. So.
Okay.
Cool.
Oh, so he doesn't work digitally. Ah, there you go. I wasn't aware of that.
I didn't know that. That's amazing. Well, maybe we'll bring like an iPad for him, and he can practice on an iPad. Out with the easels.
It wouldn't make any difference.
Kat's commented that the retreat would end up being a 70% battle royale, artist battle royale. So funny.
We can fight.
Fight with your paintbrushes. Okay, so my final question, and then Kate can do one more, and then we'll move to just finishing the show out. Is there an out-of-print game, like one that's not being made anymore, that you would love to be offered the opportunity to do art on?
Yeah, there are. There's a few games that I wouldn't mind doing. No offense to... They're ones that I love personally that I haven't seen done. One you would know because you were on my blog would be Attica, which is my...
You taught me about this game. I didn't even know it existed, and I want to try and find a copy now.
Well,
this is the one that you were doing like the best of 150 games or something with your wife, and then you made the chalkboard. Yes, I read that one. Eris showed me that, and I was like, 150 games.
I know, it's true, and it was more than that. There's a long story
as well.
I recommend go to Andrew's blog, read the blog post in detail. It's a good read. So Atticus, that would be so you'd like to do that, yeah. Yep. That
would be one. It has been reskinned. It's now been changed, reprinted as U.S. Telegraph, I believe. But the original version, I like the art actually too. It's a 3D rendered thing, but I wouldn't mind painting that again. 2 games that I would love to illustrate. I've actually thought about contacting the publishers and just offering to do it. One would be Bonanza. We just call the Bean game at our house, and Guillotine, which was done by Wizards of the Coast. Yeah. They're both great and they're both charming as is.
I don't think I've
But
played either. I know I owned Guillotine for like probably 4 years and never took it out of the shrink, and no, like I just didn't get. So I think I ended up giving it away because it just. But I kind of regret that. And I don't think I've played Bonanza, but I have a feeling I just saw someone share, maybe from Gamma or maybe from. There was another maybe Tokyo Game Market or somewhere. I saw someone that was there another. Is there a new Bonanza but with a totally different? Like it's not beans. It's with a different theme. Is that right, or
they
am I
have.
just hallucinating that?
No, you're not. I think it's flowers or something like that. I saw it recently announced, and it's a very different style. It's by, I think, I can't remember who the artist is. It might have been Beth Sobel or Jackie
Oh
Davis.
yeah.
I can't remember, but an artist that I love and respect was doing it. But it's a very different style. Like I want to do the bean game with like the drunk green bean, on a card. Or the stink bean that smells real bad, like the cartoony thing, but do it in my style. I would love
Yeah.
to do that.
There you
And
go.
guillotine's the same, like charming art from back in the day, but it hasn't been done any differently in 20 years. It looks exactly the same, so it's a little dated at this point.
There you go. Bonanza's being reskinned as
Dahlia's
Dahlia,
Nest.
says Lady Shay.
Yes.
Thank you, Lady
So
Shay.
but when I saw that, I literally, the first thought I had was when I saw the Dahlia's version, I was like, okay, they wouldn't be interested in doing the bean game, unfortunately, the way I'd want to do it. But I'd be true. I'd be true to the thing.
I forgot to put this up before, but for those who want to see more of Andrew's work, and maybe some of the things we've been talking about, check out his website, which is bosleyart.com. Lovely website with a lot of good work on it. If you go to the gallery, there is a lot of pictures that you can zoom in on and check out from so many beautiful things. I was going through this, Andrew, and discovered games that I hadn't heard of, and I'm like, oh, I think I might want to try and get this game because like it's really appealing to me. And so yeah, lovely. Here's the cover for Everdell, for like without all the graphic design elements, for those who want to check it out. I also recommend, if you're interested in seeing some of Andrew's work, just going to the Board Game Geek listing for him as an artist, and you can check out the games in detail that he's done work on. There's a lot of them. I think there's 78 listings. I don't know how many of them are expansions and things compared to base games, but a lot of work. And the other thing, while I'm talking about your website, Andrew, we raised about the Smoking Bones. So can you just tell us a little bit about Smoking Bones, because we didn't cover that before, and I am curious about it. Is it supposed to load more than that? I don't know.
You just that's the front page. You can just start flipping through. Oh, if you went back, but yeah, those little arrows.
Yeah, and it's okay.
Yeah,
there we go.
There we go. Yeah, the Smoking Bones is a story, a series that I've been working on for a very long time. It's very much in its early stages, but it's been in the planning for a long time. And it's basically a story about a character, Red Jones, that you're seeing here, and he has a touring company called the Smoking Bones Travel Company that takes people to the magical places of the world, and those places are disappearing, and so he is working to preserve and promote those magical places while juggling some other conflicts and things. And so this has been something I've been really excited about for a long time. Spent most of my time, unfortunately, or in the past, doing a lot of concept art, a lot of just character design and things like that, and really just kind of spend time
I can see
in the
that
world.
one behind you on the wall, the flame creature behind you on the wall there.
Yeah, that's the Wither Fox. It's
that's a cool name.
So I've been working on this for a while, but then long before I was in board games, but as soon as I started working in board games, I was like, this would be like, I had started to come to appreciate the vehicle that games can be to tell a really interesting story and to immerse yourself in a world. And so I was like, this really could be, as opposed to just writing a series of books, which I always have intended and still do. still working on. Why not make a game out of this? So I pitched it to Stonemeyer, to Jamie at Stonemeyer Games, and he was really excited about it. And so we've been working on something for some time. So
nice.
it's
and so I guess people just go to your website to get updates. That's probably the best way. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm not on social media anymore, or at least not active. And so there's I have a Discord and a Patreon, and we have a really cool community of people. So I think a couple of people have been here on the video today. And so I share artwork. We have a lot of conversations and hang out and play games together. And I do live streams painting, and everybody there can kind of get an inside scoop. And sometimes I can share secrets on a video live stream that aren't recorded, so I can spill stuff that nobody else gets to hear about. But yeah, it's that would be the best place to learn about that and learn about upcoming projects that I'm working on, would be through those things. And I have a newsletter that I send out monthly that gives the broad picture of what's happening.
I've now subscribed. I did that, I think, yesterday or the day before. So hopefully we're seeing some updates, which will be exciting. All right, so I think we'll finish up with the interview, and then thank you for your time and all the information. So now we're going to segue into some housekeeping, but this also involves Andrew. So Kate, do you want to tell us, I'll load up the picture, do you want to tell us what is the topic of the housekeeping today?
So our Stellar Kickstarter campaign is launching next week, Tuesday for the US, super early on the Wednesday for those of us living in the future. And of course, it's the 3 triptychs. We've got one from Andrew, which is this beautiful triptych you can see here. And I've got the actual print for that first piece here, because you can see a little bit of the lovely metallic effects happening in that. If I do that, you can see we've got, some of the beautiful bronze, especially through the horses and the browns. We've also got a triptych by Jackie Davis and Miguel Coimbra. And
let me just you're talking so fast and my fingers cannot keep up. Okay, so we got Miguel's triptych.
So there's Miguel's and Jackie's as well. Each triptych has a theme. So Jackie's is about the kinds of gamers. We've got the gumshoe, the solo gamer, and the omni gamer. Miguel's is about the gaming groups. We've got the fantasy party there throwing dice in the tavern, and then there's the sci-fi party in space, and then there's the horror hangout with Cthulhu, and there's a vampire, and apparently Wednesday Addams has 2 heads now, and we've got Thing, and there's Frankenstein's monster up the back. And then, of course, we've got Andrew's, which are about the stages of gaming. Andrew, my last question, how much of your gaming experience shows up in these? Is this, as a kid, this was you?
Yeah, I think it is. Me and Dan, we spent a good amount of time kind of talking about our combined experiences at these different levels, like what, so I think it definitely, I polled some people on my Discord, asking them, hey, what this is what we're thinking, or what would, at these 3 stages, kind of what games fit in this category for you. But a lot of them reflect definitely my own personal experience. So, I mean, I was lots of rolling dice when I was younger, and, all of my games had that, and some sort of track, and
I hadn't even realized of that.
I hadn't even noticed the path as a track either.
As a track, that's so clever. Oh, so many layers. And I just see, I can't see in detail, and I can't zoom in, unfortunately, with this particular software, but it looks like there's some stuff on the butterfly wings, and
suits from cards. And then the next game, we went into stuff kind of more like gateway games. So we have, the idea of, Carcassonne or Settlers of Catan, like these, we moved to slightly different things. We definitely wanted a theme of movement and travel that was going on. So we have this in each, there's some sort of caravan or train or monorail that's happening in each of these settings.
You've got the procession there, and then you've got
in each as well. And I've seen Dan jotted down some of the Easter eggs in each artist's triptych, and some of them are just so clever.
So what's the third piece focusing on, Andrew?
So for me, one of the things that was, a lot of stuff that was coming through was, the different styles of games. I think earlier on it was like, I mean, the first one is just like traveling, going along a track. The second one was more like a little bit more intimate. Like I might be managing a farm. I might, smaller economies type of things like this. But this was like more, okay, we're, maybe it's something like a terraforming Mars, where we're managing something on a much global, much more huge scale. When we get to those bigger, more advanced, more heavier games, I certainly wanted to include Scythe, which is my favorite game. So I have a mech in there that's that. I happened to sneak a Smoking Bones, airship up in the top there.
When you were when you were telling us about the Smoking Bones before, I saw the airship and I went, oh, that's what that is in the third one.
That's
right. And the plane from Plane Crafters in the second one.
Is it in there? Well, yes, yeah.
I figured that was from Plane Crafters. I thought that would make sense.
I hate to disappoint, but it was actually we thought a cool plane would be a really neat
It's a cool plane, yeah.
I will say, I threw a Plane Crafters plane in the cover of Tapestry.
Nice.
But yeah.
Anyway. Now you're gonna now this is what you're setting up as sort of like a MCU DCU kind of mashup where you've got properties that are like cross-pollinating. So you're doing that in board games where it's like, oh, these are all actually part of the same universe.
This is my way of conquering all of the board game industry and saying fine. So basically every game I own, and I've put part of my worlds in all of them. And so yes, if you want the full true experience, you have to get all of them and follow my world, of course. Yes.
That's fantastic. So Kate, just about the Kickstarter. So if people go to launchtabletop.com/KS, that takes them to the Kickstarter
Click the button,
page.
Get notified when we go live. Yes, we would love to see people there. I know, and also I just wanted to put this out there. There have been some questions that we've had about why are you doing a Kickstarter? The Kickstarter is what allows us to commission these pieces. It's not something that's well known outside the industry, but the cost of commissioning artwork is very, very high. Artists deserve to be paid well for what they do. They create, the experience of the game. When you sit down to play something like Scythe, it's the artwork that really sells it to you. Otherwise, it's just a bunch of things moving around some, hexagonal whatevers. The art is what makes it what it is. It's the thing so when Andrew and his wife went home after playing Catan that first time, they didn't just dream about hexes. They dreamt about moving the things and the roads and the art. That was the thing. Artists deserve to be paid well for the beauty and the joy that they bring to our lives through games. Doing a Kickstarter allows us to commission art and pay artists what they deserve. So that's why we're kickstarting it.
Yeah, so because for those who don't know, we have launched the actual Stellar Prints shop and website. The standard process though is that the products on there are not artworks that Launch Tabletop has created or made. They're ones that publishers and artists have submitted themselves, and they've joined the program, and then they get to sell prints relating to their things that they've done. So the Kickstarter was us actually trying to inject something unique and different, right? So that's where the cost comes from and everything. Yep. Yeah.
Yes, we would love to see people on the Kickstarter. And Stellar as a thing is for us to support publishers with a little bit of ongoing income from commissions for their pieces that are on the store. And also because gamers love their games. I haven't ever met a gamer who's like, about games, who doesn't express that in some way in their personality, either by wearing a T-shirt or having a room full of games at home, or, taking their expansion boxes and hanging them on the wall to decorate. So this allows us to support gamers by giving them beautiful things, and the artists and the creators of these beautiful games as well.
And so if you're a publisher or an artist who's worked in games, then you can also reach out to us at stellar@launchtabletop.com, and then go through a process to see if joining the program is a good fit. And if you end up joining, then you can have your stuff for sale. And as I understand it, and Kate, please correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, publishers are usually going to be putting up the artwork relating to games that they've that they've made, but artists have a little bit more flexibility in that it does. They can have some other projects they've worked on, and we're happy to.
So all artists have pieces tucked away that they've worked on, and just somebody felt like drawing a dinosaur, which actually happened this week. I was talking to an artist.
Maybe a dinosaur on a pirate ship. Maybe is what we're thinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So they all have these pieces sitting around, in a drawer. And if they're, I think other people would really like this. We would love to help them share it with the world, So, yes, board game artists.
Obviously we do, like, the Stellar stuff is all board game related. So even if the art from the artist is not directly board game related, it's supporting people.
If the artist is working in the industry, we would love to talk to them. Sorry, I've got a cat on my desk again.
No worries. What we might do then is
Yes, and the other little bit of housekeeping I had was, if you are going to Origins and you're looking at getting a Launch Tabletop prototype for that, you need to get that order in really, really soon, because it takes us 6 to 10 days to make it, and then you've got to allow up to 2 weeks to ship it to you. So
if we're gonna talk about that, I might as well. We're just gonna break our order for everything, so not follow the script as intended. So if you do want to, if you're a game designer or a publisher who's using Launch Lab, which is our print-on-demand manufacturing service, to make some copies to take to Origins or elsewhere, then you can use the code Materialise at checkout and get 20% off your order. That doesn't include shipping, and that can maybe help for your Origins samples or prototypes or whatever it is you're wanting to get done.
And we'll also have someone at Origins in the Unpub room for a lot of it. Kat will be there, so she's going to have a little surprise tucked away, which we'll tell you about later, that you might be able to get in on. But we'll save that for a later week.
So since as we're breaking our regular script, this sounds like we're doing segues, which we must be getting better at this job if we can do segues naturally. So that sounds to me like we are suggesting people follow us on, our social media and things like that.
Crazy.
So that they can keep up to date with when we're doing stuff.
Yeah, like Roxley Games says, follow us everywhere, make it weird. I love it how they sign off their newsletter with that. Follow us everywhere, make it weird. I don't know who came up with that. Gavin, if it's you, you're a genius. That's hilarious. It always makes me giggle.
So we have I'll just make these videos a bit smaller or more even. So we have a Discord. So if anyone, you can come chat with us at launchtabletop.com/Discord and ask questions about the service or Stellar or anything, or even just chat about games in general. Yeah. We're very open to that. We're also on YouTube and Facebook, so you can find us there and follow us for updates. I think we're on Instagram as well, from memory.
Yes, we're on Instagram as well. We're trying to do better at putting things up for people to see. So, yes. So busy doing work, we don't get to do the social media as much. Sorry, the cat's back.
No worries. All right, well, I'll wrap up now. And so thank you very much, Andrew, for your time and sharing all your experience and stuff. And I know it feels like we only barely scratched the surface and there's a whole lot of stuff we could talk about more. But I think we've already talked about it, but I'll bring it up again. The best place for people to... As long as it's not weird.
That's creepy. Right, Craig, as long as it's weird and not creepy.
Yes. True. So the best place for people to follow Andrew's stuff is at bosleyart.com, and then on there's the newsletter, Discord, and Patreon. That's correct, Andrew? Nothing else that you wanted to share? Okay. And then obviously the Smoking Bones is this upcoming collaboration with Stonemaier. So I assume just keeping onto your newsletter would help people stay up to date with what's happening with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely.
Is there a kind of estimated timeline for this project, or is it a bit up in the air right now?
I can't confirm
I can't confirm or deny anything.
Neither confirm nor deny at this time.
Fair enough. You don't have to.
I was really excited that I could confirm the collaboration with Stonemaier. That was I got the go.
Oh, it's a great. That's so exciting. Yeah.
I was expecting that to be a little bit later from now, but yes, that. But
that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Oh, well, keep us in the loop with what's
Fantastic.
going on, and we'll make sure to share it with people who watch.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, definitely keep us in the loop. And if you do want to come back on the show and talk about that or something else, then you're always welcome. Just send us a message and we'll gladly work it out. So yeah, thank you again for sharing your time and experiences. Thank you, Kate, as always, for being a wonderful co-host. Materialise is produced by Launch Tabletop. I'm your host, Eris, and I think we've already covered every other little thing we need to talk about. So I will play the outro video if I find the button. All right, bye everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.